Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Bg Jimy, a social media marketing specialist, indie artist, and introverted nerd. I help creative business owners, queer musicians, to build a strong brand and impact communities with their work on social media. If that's something you're interested in or resonate with, stick around and let's begin.
So welcome to the Bg Jimy Show and the I Want to Be Me series, episode number 37. The I Want to Be Me series inspired by my own song with the same title, where I talk about the power of not giving a F anymore and living truthfully to yourself. Today I'm super happy and pumped to introduce you Erica, because Erica is the radio host on Canal Sud Toulouse with her program Lagniappe. They are also a teacher and the founder of SloSoulLife, a place to encourage creation and a holistic balanced life. Can't wait for you to hear more about their stories, their struggle, and how today they are finally close or aligned with themselves. I want to be me. It's time, and welcome, Erica. How are you doing?
Hi, it's so nice to be here. And yeah, that's good. And one said a lot before, so
So my first question, first I'll have a little backstory on my story of how I kind of met you is that I was working at this school. I was studying at this school that now that is SAE. And you were teaching English in this classroom. And the first thing and that popped out of my mind when I went into your room was because when I went to try to study music, I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna be in good company, if people are nice, if they're spiritual people, how are they like? I was like, I don't. But when I first walked into your room where I was like, I'm gonna take classes with this person, I was just like, wait a minute. It feels like God is inside here. I don't know what's going on. Is this girl some kind of spiritual? I don't know what is going on, but I'm pretty out. So that was my first impression of you on the
you know, you're telling me this now, and I didn't know that you had that experience walking into my classroom. Because I had a lot of people that were just like, I'm trying to get my work done, and they're like, "Hey, Miss," nobody calls me Erica, and nobody called me Miss Smith. It was like, "Hey, Miss, can I just sit in your classroom?" I'm like, yes. People would come. You would actually, like, after your 2-hour class was finished, you would come back and sit in kind of like the same class the very next hour. I'm like, you only got nothing else to do.
because it's like comfortable. It was so comfortable.
Oh,
Girl.
okay, mission accomplished, right? Check the box, right? So yeah.
Describe yourself to my audience for those who don't know who you are. After this little backstory, what do you do?
Like we've had this question. We've talked about this before. It's always you're very selective about who you tell what you do. Or did I say that correctly?
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't tell everything to everybody about what you're doing. It's just really based upon the context. So if you are a musician, then I'm going to tell you about some of the music that I might have online. If you're a writer, you'll hear about that. If you are in school for psychology, then you're going to hear about that. If you're in the world of journalism, you ain't going to hear nothing about no journalism. But if you have something to share as a journalist, you can come on my radio show and do an interview. Like, I don't ever call myself a journalist. I'm not very organized in that way. I'm more of a creative with creatives, right? Did I say if you're a writer, then then I write. So for example, my cousin Mosaic Dove here, so Tammy is an artist and a writer, and then we're family members. So there's all kind of stuff that can be kind of like mixed in with what we talk about. So it depends upon your proximity to me, how much you're going to find out about what I do. The basic of what people usually get, because I don't need everybody that close, is I teach English.
Yep.
Period. And that's
period. Oh my God. Well, is that a way for you to like protect your peace, or is that just because you want to know the other person first?
No, sometimes it's just to keep the trash out. I mean, and I hate to say, oh no, I don't hate to say it like that, but literally it keeps the trash out. For people that see only one facet, and if that's all they want to see, then guess what? That's all they're gonna see. I'm not that type of person that's gonna put myself out there and on some kind of platform where people can come and see me. It's like, if you find it, then we'll talk about it. If you don't, well, guess what? I'm not gonna bring it up. That was a lovely thing about working in the center of town in a shop. So I worked in a couple of shops here, independent shops here in Toulouse, because that's where we are. And people just only thought that's what I did. I worked in the shops. Perfectly fine. Why? It keeps people who are interested in Erica or who are interested in me really interested in me, and not as far as like what I could give them or what I could share with them or how I could help them with whatever. If I worked at Airbus, for example, right? If they were with me or if they became my friend, it was because they were really interested in me and not what I could possibly offer other than maybe a free pencil, right? Or a piece of paper, from one of the shops that I worked in, right? So if that's, I don't try to discourage people from any other ideas that they have about me, right? So a lot of it is about protecting my peace, but it's also about protecting my spaces. So that is my peace, right? Protecting who comes in through that front door. Or actually who is in this space. Right? So yeah, I can say it is a kind of protective mechanism, but literally keeps the trash out.
It keeps the trash out. But I love that because in this society, it's like they want us to know everything about it. Even with social media, they know every little part, where you went, how you feel in the moment. And I'm like, don't even have time to think for yourself. Like, everything everywhere. Like, what?
No, I mean, like, if somebody had made this statement, a really close friend of mine, she says, "Oh, Erica, you have, the radio program, and you've been doing it a long time, and you should put it out there more." And I was like, I probably should, but I'm not, right? For me, I don't feel as if, like, for example, Bg Jimy or other people having a podcast are in sort of a competition with me. If people want to know what I'm doing, they can literally look it up, right? They can look it up, or if people are interested in me, then they find out. But if they're not, then it's not for them. I'm not the type of, like I said, I'm not the type of person that's going to even advertise for my business, right? Because I really, and I'm going to put it to you this way, and I know that you'll understand, everybody who is in my environment is there because the Holy Spirit led them there. Not because I advertised, and they found me because that there was something there's some reciprocity in fact that could happen. I can't even say the word anymore in English. That there's something that I could either share with that person or something that I can learn from them, and that there's something that is dono, like we said, that there's something to give on each side. And sometimes there isn't. Sometimes there is just something where there's something that I would need to share with that person, and it's through whatever media or platform that I might have, whether it's through the books. Like literally, one of the first books that I wrote, I gave it to 10 people, 10 individuals. Yeah. 5 of them came back and said, "What the hell is this?" They had no idea. They were like, "We know this is garbage here," right? They didn't say it like that, but that's what I heard. 5 other people came back. One lady, she had to read the book twice, and then she says, "Okay, I understood." But I kid you not, Bg Jimy, there was one woman that came back She had highlighted the entire book. And that is my audience. Those people. That one person out of 10. That's who I'm interested in. Whether it's for the radio show and it's, my beau that's listening to the show, and so he's like, yeah, it's right. He's sending me like text messages while he's listening to the show. I don't have anything. I don't have that from anybody else, right? So it's like 1 in 10. And if it's 1 in 10, or even if it's 1 in 100, that is touched by whatever sector that I find myself in at that moment, then my job is done.
It's good because it's like,
The work is being done.
yeah, you know who you are, you know what value you give, and the people that are supposed to receive it are going to receive it,
Right. I mean, we have those conversations,
Later, that's why you're on the show. What did you, I was like, girl, people need to hear about this little boy.
I mean, I think with the world that a lot of individuals are in right now, they believe that the biggest work is with thousands and hundreds of people. The first work that needs to be done is with the person that looks in the mirror at you every single day. That's your first job. That's your first best friend. If you don't like that person that's looking at you in the mirror, how are you going to give anything of caliber or of worth, any kind of service, anything to anyone else? And I don't even know how my kids are going to, see this when they become older and I'm no longer here, for example. Because I used to tell them all the time, is who got to live with you for the rest of your life?
You.
And I used to stand them in front of a mirror and say, and point in the mirror and says, who has to live with you for the rest of your life? Yeah. Right? That is your first audience. That is your first public. That is your first person that you need to make sure that you provide for. Because the first gift that we were given was this body. Yeah. And so if we don't take care of that, how can we, take care of our other gifts that will be used to help other people? It's I don't want to say it's impossible,
but gonna have a lot more to do.
Let's look away.
I love that. So let's back a little bit, because now you're here and you know who you are, what you like to do, how you impact people's life. But I think that you were, first of all, you weren't born in France, right?
Oh,
girl.
No.
So
Nah.
growing up there, and was that like different cultural aspect that you had to figure out moving here?
So like making that move so I'm originally from Louisiana, and so people like, for people like, I really want to go to this place and it's wonderful. It is. But I am from a place called Baton Rouge, Louisiana. It's like, the Baton Rouge part usually throws people off, especially if they're like,
a little French.
It's like, where is that in France? This. I could say Martinique, but that's not true, And I usually say it's an old colony of France. And I think about it real hard. And then I'm like, King Louis and Anna. And so I almost do like a whole history lesson, right? And then it finally falls into line that I'm from the US and, lived in Louisiana. And moving here and I'm going to keep saying this to your audience as well, is that we have had this conversation before, is like when you're coming from somewhere else where you were raised in a more religious context, which helped to eventually develop your spiritual life. You get here and you're like, did God leave? And just, I mean, like you get, and you feel that spiritual disconnect or that spiritual void when you get here. I mean, already before coming, I had, but I still also have stomach issues. And every time I hear the word anxiety, I have to be careful, because I think of Mel Brooks and him and his movie Singing High Anxiety, but that's something that that the audience can look that up, and it's actually really funny. But in the moment when you're anxious about like life, and then you come into a place here, right? And you're not really fully understanding why people are complaining or why people formulate words out of their mouths the way that they do. And the whole language itself is set up negatively. So I'm coming from an environment that is extremely positive, maybe delusionally positive, where some folks might be a little delusional and they never express or rarely express their negative emotions. And I get here, out comes the hives. Not like I didn't have them at home, or that that were related to stress issues. But it's like, oh my God, did God really leave? Like,
where is he right now?
He left for like, and then you realize no, because these people are complaining so much. It's not that God left the building, but these individuals have left God.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
I mean, that's after a while of being here, and you're like, oh,
too different.
and it makes a big difference. It's like, God hasn't left. These people left. That makes a big difference. And then that also makes a big difference as far as gratitude. I'm like, these ungrateful son of a son. Are these people ever grateful for anything? And then it makes you turn into the same people that you're talking about, right? So I'm like, oh my gosh. But you start looking at things a little different. You're like, okay, well, this person, they're not even happy that, it's too hot outside. So God's creator, universal ways brings a cloud in, and then the people complain, oh, it's cloudy. And then the sun comes back, oh, it's too hot. Can y'all just be grateful that you can see that there is something that, so it's just anyway. So that was something within my experience that was very difficult in the very beginning, is the negativity being here. Coming back from an environment that it was really, really positive to France. And that was almost 25 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
So it's like, oof. At the end of 2024, it'll be 25 years.
Okay. And how did, therefore, two things. First, how did being in Louisiana shape the person you are today? And second of all, how did you then kind of change a bit of your mind to be like, okay, I have to protect my peace. I have to protect the fact that I don't want to be ungrateful. I want to be able to thank God for what I have today, because I know that this is what is good for me.
Well, like for me growing up where I was, this is so integral. It is so a part of my DNA that it's not, I would not ever be grateful. You know what I'm saying? That it's not something just because I'm in an environment where, and this is what brings people to you or to us. Like when you said you walked into the classroom and you felt something, things happen to us and we have a choice. We could either keep the good out of those relationships or we don't, or those situations, or, we could look at them differently and say, okay, well, shit, that happened. Now, what can I learn from it? And then how can I help other people based upon whatever happened, right? So being in Louisiana, and I feel very blessed and privileged to have had experienced God early enough for myself, right? To have my own relationship and understand that there is the book of Bg Jimy, there's the book of Erica, there's the book of Tam, literally the book of Tam, and that God is working with us in each of our spaces according to who we are and where we are. So, and also where we're sent. So, coming here to France, it wasn't just some arbitrary decision. I was following my future husband here. And I was like, what is this place? But because of who I was raised by, my family, like I said, early experiences with God and understanding certain things for myself about who God was for me, it made it a lot easier to move here and then kind of transition into who I am today, right? With a little bit more grace, because there isn't that part. Now, I did say I come from a positive environment, but it's very judgmental too, because I come from the South, right? It's a Bible Belt. People don't talk, they don't tell you nothing, and then when stuff happens, people get all judgy, right? Oh, why are you wearing that short skirt? Why are you doing this? People shouldn't drink. They should do. Anyway, so coming from that environment into this one, and then like I said, just really keeping the good, and understanding what God might have to say to Bg Jimy is not going to be the exact same way God is going to speak to me, because we're two different people. Yes, we are different people, and understanding that I had to be separated from my family and things that I knew to understand that particular aspect of the relationship between God and man. Or when I say God and man, you know that I mean that, God is beyond gender. And for me, souls are genderless, but that's another story too. But how we're treated and how God speaks to us is going to be so unique and so different. So, yeah.
So did you, from what I understand, you grew up Christian, like a lot of Black people over there? And therefore, like, do you connect to your faith the way the girl back then connect to her faith, and now is that like a different way of viewing life?
It shifted, but not so much so, because the foundational base remains the same. There's always this projection into faith. The faith is believing in things that are not seen, right? And then there's also the other part now that is a little bit more physical. It's like I've been praying, and now I gotta see some, I gotta see some results, And so that has been a lot more prevalent now, later on in life, because you have people that will say, well, pray. And I'm like, ain't nothing more than
action.
After a while, prayer without faith, without action is dead, right? There has to be some movement on my part. But so my faith has shifted because of life experiences as well. So, like I said, being separated or being set apart for different reasons helps you to grow differently in your faith. And what I was able to kind of understand, especially over the past few years, just like recently, and this is one of the reasons why I'm like, okay, I like my mojito, so I probably will not be able to become a pastor. I like my mojito.
Oh, it depends on which church. Some people like it.
I'm just telling you, I'm a part of that church where I might not be able to be passed because I like my mojitos, even though I might drink them at home. But what I see now, religion is very important as a child. Just like your parents would show you the direction, like how to get to your grandparents' house, for example. You need a map. You need instructions on how to get from point A to where your grandparents' house is. Okay. After a while, this is how I see religion. After a while, you no longer need that map. However, I will say this, the little ice cream shop on the way to your grandparents' house, you might have forgotten. So it's important to have the map in order to remember, oh, well, you remember that place that used to sell that strawberry ice cream that was so delicious? I forgot where it was. Where is it, right? And so religion can kind of help you guide you back to like those different little places. But once you know where God is for yourself, God always knows where we are, right? But once you know where God is, what is that map for? It's to help you kind of stay online, to keep, but you don't always have to get to your grandparents' house the same way. Now, my prophet is Jesus, right? And I like to try and follow, along those lines of my prophet, my big brother, and at the same time, give God room to be God.
Yep.
And allow God to be God. I shared with my cousin last year, I think it was last summer, that I woke up from a dream, but this is for Erica. This is not for Bg Jimy. This is not for my cousin. This is not for my experience. And at the end of the dream, it said that everything you thought you knew about God is about to change. I was like,
what? What does that mean?
I'm trying to find out. So I'm like, what does that mean? What you mean everything I thought about God is about to change? But fast forward to some 10 years prior, and I'm going through a very un-Catholic situation as my relationship with my ex-husband is coming to its completion. And I'm walking around like Hester Prim. If anyone has read The Scarlet Letter, you'll know what that means. I'm walking around with my scarlet letter on my chest, and I'm like, oh, God must be so disappointed and disgusted in me. And I kid you not, that voice came back and said, how dare you think you know what God thinks of you? It was like somebody had slapped me in my face.
Well, you needed that at that moment.
At that moment. So had I been at home, I don't know, like had I been in the States or living in the same environment that I was in, I don't know if I would have had those particular experiences without having other people's hands on my stuff, right? I literally became an adult away from home. So I was given the foundation by family members, my grandparents, my parents, various other family members. That was a religious one, but that spiritual aspect had always been there. And it was what I learned as a child, literally, they say train up a child in the way they should go, because those are the things that are going to carry us as adults. How many times has the 3, 4, and 5-year-old I was carry the 20-something-year-old when I moved here, right? To remind me of certain things. It was the child I was, not the adult that I would become, right? And a lot of people forget that, right? It's not always who we're going to become that kind of shapes our future. It's also who we were.
Yeah.
That helps to cultivate who we are now, which will eventually cultivate who we will become. So,
I like that. I like that. How do you balance having the life that you desire? You see the life that you wanted, that you're supposed to have in the spirit realm.
Yeah.
But in the day-to-day life, there's still like struggle of the
Oh
physical.
my God.
That's bad work.
Last year, so we talked about anxiety and stress and things like that. So literally, when you have, or when you've learned to develop a prayer life, and prayer, and it's not something huge or big. It's a conversation between you and God. And there is one point, there's a meditative part when you're meditating, and the meditating is when you shut up and listen, right? So the prayer and meditation. So when you create those particular spaces with you and your creator, however people, call God, right? Once you develop that space, right, there is a certain amount of conversation that goes on when you're in the thick of things. And last year for me, being accepted into the master's degree program for this psychology program that you were also in. Okay, by the way, y'all, we were in the same undergraduate psychology program, and I didn't find out until Bg Jimy was in my class as a student. We were in. Anyway, so last year, after 5 years of applying to get into this master's degree program, I finally got in. And I was like, okay, this is great. This is wonderful. Thank you, Lord.
Finally.
Right. And then I was like, and the money part.
Mm-hmm.
And you know how I usually tell people, it's like God does not want us to be miserable. Why do I feel like I'm on the brink of becoming miserable? I was like, starting off months, like the month of August, September, October, November, those 4 months, negative. And not just negative, like as in like just $2-3. I was like airplane tickets to Baton Rouge, negative, right? I was tickets to Mark Lake, negative. And I had really gotten to the point where in my prayer time, in the same voice, I kid you not, angels are ancestors, okay? It feels like I felt a family member say at one point, it's like, if we don't do something for her right now, we're going to lose her, right? Because it had gotten to that desperate of a place. And we've heard, and old people talk about the dark is before dawn. Yeah, but I still need a damn flashlight. I need something. I need something. And, everything eventually worked out because there was a lot of prayer and there was a lot of action that had been taking place, right? So I didn't understand how things were going to work out. And being a human, the how is the part that really trips us. Like, how good are you going to do this? Well, it's like, little girl, I have supporting you for the past 40 something years. You think I was like, no, what? Why is my bank account looking crazy? Why? And it's like, I gave you a support group and a group of people who could help support you during this period. Sometimes you gotta learn to ask for help.
Ooh, that's the part we don't want to hear.
Oh, okay. I had to do what now? Ask for help. Okay. So when the person says how much, you tell them how much you need. When the person says, what do you need? You tell them what you need, because sometimes those individuals have been sent to you for a reason. I'm sorry. Okay. But I think there was another part of your question that was moving in towards, like, how do you, what was it about? Seeing your kind of like manifested life or whatever. The only way I see my manifested life right now is through whatever God would have for me. Because whatever God could have for me is better than what I could ever imagine for myself. And I used to write out every year, and we're at the beginning of 2024. And every year people are supposed to be making resolutions about how they're going to change things and what they're going to do different and da-da-da. And I was like, what I'm going to do different. And I think I wrote down in this particular notebook. And as a New Year's kind of thing that I wrote on top of something that took place in August, right? I desire only what God desires for me by divine rights, by grace in a perfect way. And God is the gift and the giver of gifts. And I was like, okay, this is not an original statement. This was this was a statement made by Florence Scovel Shinn in 1925 in her book called The Game of Life. And I was like, I listened to that book. I'm like, let me take that note. So people were talking about the things that they needed and things that they wanted and da-da-da-da. And I was like, and then this particular statement comes up. And I was like, you know what? How about instead of trying to make, quote unquote, manifest certain visions and things like that, why don't I just try to accept and desire only God's will for my life? Now, we've heard that before. We've heard when people say, oh yeah, I only desire what God desires. Okay. All right. It's almost like, had Joseph known what God had in store for him, would he have allowed his brothers to throw him in that hole? Sometimes we don't need to know how. Sometimes we just don't need to know. Because I'm like, ooh, if some of our family members knew that some of their children would have been captives into slavery to become who they are today as individuals in various communities, would they have, if the story was known ahead of time, right? And it's like, ooh, okay. So it's a really, if I say that I trust what God has for me and that my Creator only wants the best for me, then why would I not trust that? If I say that I'm supposed to trust that. So it's like, I wrote it over. So I made plans. Now, this is like a whole thing of like, yeah, the plan long term. And it was written for the past 2 years. It's been this plan of how I'm going to develop my business and develop the music. Now, kid you not, 2023, I did do those 4 songs.
Yeah.
2022, I did write a whole book. Who cares if it's 35 pages? I wrote it and it's online. And so there's things that on this particular quote unquote like vision manifesto that have manifested because there was work behind that. And at the same time, wanting what God's best is for us should be at the top of the list, right? So even though I said that I wanted to, make 4 songs before a certain time, and that happened, I was like, okay, that's great. But that falls in line into what God would have for me. So I'm like, okay, cool. So just really getting into that aspect of really wanting and desiring and kind of like thirsting after whatever God's will is for my life, which usually comes in handy if you don't do well in exams. I'm like, that what God does. No, I mean, okay, so just to share with your public is like I'm coming out of exams for like the first set of exams for this master's program, and it's like I put words on paper. I prayed to God, the ancestors, the angels, the cloud of witnesses, other people's grant. I was asking for everybody's help, right? So we'll see. But whatever God's will and perfect purpose, that's exactly what it's going to be. I'll accept that.
Yeah.
But in saying that, this does not mean that we should be passive, right? Mm-hmm. That we should say, oh, well, it's God will that, it's just everything should go to shit. No, because God does not want us to be miserable. Okay. Sometimes we have to learn lessons and to know what is what and which is which. But overall, and I tell people this all the time, God does not want us to be miserable. What parent on this planet, unless they're deficient and have some other problems, would want their children to suffer? And I think this is why it's so hard for people to really wrap their heads around what's happening in Gaza, for example, to those individuals. And then you have to realize that individuals and groups and systems make decisions. And racism and hatred is a real thing. So that's, yes. And profiting off of pain is also a real thing. And I think people forget that aspect too, is that there are people that are profiting off of every time a bomb is dropped anywhere. Just as there are millions of people that suffer from it, right? And I'm like, oh, fix it, somebody. Fix it, Jesus. Fix it, Esau. Fix it, God. Fix it all. Fix it, right? So when South Africa said that they were bringing, the U.S. and some folks to The Hague, it's like, this is very, very interesting. But we'll see how far this goes, right?
So
Yeah.
Life is a little strange sometimes, but I like what you said about allowing God to just be God in our lives, Like, it's good to have our plans and the things that we want, because also God wants what we want in some way, but if he thinks that something is going to be better, it's going to be better for sure.
Right.
And I like that because this year has been a little weird for me in the beginning. January, a lot of stuff happening.
15 days in. And
oh, girl, I have to tell you, but the rest of the week.
15 days in. Maybe we'll talk about it on Thursday, right?
It's But in the middle of that, for once in my life, I was just, because when I say it's hectic, it's a really hard thing has happened, and for once I was like in pain in a way, like I cried a lot. But inside of me, for once, I felt like a lot of peace, being like, you know what? It's all of this for a real purpose. And if it's something happening now, it's because I have to learn some type of lesson, and I'm going to be okay. Like, I've been okay until then, so I'm going to be okay.
So and literally we will be okay, right? And that's the thing about having faith-based practices as well, is that there's something that you can rely on, that when the shit does hit the fan, that you can go into this spiritual space within yourself, right? And say that, and just as the old people used to say, it's like, God has carried me this far. Why would he leave me now? Why would I be left to suffer? And this goes back to the parent. Any parent that cares about their children would never leave them abandoned, right? And then I'll say, again, this is why, what's happening in the world right now is so difficult, right? Because it does feel as if individuals are being abandoned. But and I'll say it again, there's people that are making some very evil choices as to what happens to the lives of other people. So, but karma comes around.
Later.
Karma comes around, and I was like, abort.
Okay. I have another story, the second story of things that happened when I was at the school with you. Girl, I was like, I don't know where I'm going with this sentence, but I'll.
This is what I absolutely love about live, is that you can go back in, and you don't have to edit. It is perfect the first time. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. Because this episode is part of the series I Want to Be Me, and one thing that has happened at that particular time was that I was wondering if it was okay to be me, and if it was okay to love man and things like this. And there was this one time where I was extremely anxious, and I started just painting my nails just because I wanted to. And then one day you pulled me out, like I was walking in the corridor, like I was walking there, and then you pulled me out being like, you know what, Samuel, like you can do and be whoever you want. And even if it's not what I think, you can be whoever you want anyways, okay? And God loves you the way you are. And I was like, I think in some way God saved me through you at that moment, because I was just like, oh shit, like it's okay. I'm gonna be okay.
You're gonna be okay. And so thank you for sharing that, because I've been thinking about, like, when people say, like, who do you want to be? Like that question. It's like, who do you want to be? And the first thing that usually comes to mind is, I want to be the best me I can be. I don't know who she is. I want to find out who that is, because apparently there is something amazing in there. I don't even know what it is yet. But apparently there is something in there. And I want to find out what it is too, and it's me, There's this pastor, and like I said, I don't usually agree, and he's no longer with us, God rest his soul. I never really agreed about what he said about certain individuals and things like that, but he did say something that was very poignant. And with me coming from the background that I come from in agriculture, because I was a forest management major. So that means that I was basically doing timber inventory with the Forest Service. And he said something. He said that the forest is not ahead of the seed. The forest is actually inside of the seed. So everything that we are and who that we can, it's already within us. We're already born with it. It's just a matter of, well, what's going to be developed as we go through childhood, adolescence, and even into adulthood, and even into older age. How we develop whatever gifts and talents God has already placed within us. It just blows my mind sometimes. It's like, some people say, well, I'd like to have Beyonce's money or whatever. I'm like, maybe what God has for Bg Jimy and what God has for me as Erica is even bigger than that.
Yeah.
I feel, but that's like the little kid in me that's like, it's probably even bigger,
And even me, I'm thinking like when people say this, I'm like, y'all don't understand how much they had to sacrifice and how much they have prayed and how much they have worked. Like, if you're not this person, you'll probably crumble doing the same type of work.
Exactly. I'm like, I am just interested in being the best me that I can be. Because I don't know who that is. I know who the lazy me is. Because y'all don't see on the other side of this panel, right? But I know what she's like. I know what that's like. But I want to know who that individual is, like that is like, I want to know that forest that is trapped inside of that seed within myself, right? I want to know that part. I want to know who she is according to God's will, right? And I'm a little anxious about the journey as well, but I'm also quite excited because you have certain people that if we look at our lives, and this is the danger of making comparisons between individuals, is saying that, okay, well, at a certain age I'm supposed to do this, at a certain age I'm supposed to do that, and especially here in France where they try to lock you in early.
Yep.
Early at an early age, at teenage, you ain't even out of middle school yet, and they trying to lock you into a certain category or a certain job or a certain box, right? That's the word. And when people discover that they may be able to do more, they're quickly shut back into that box. Just the same thing that people do with God, for example. They put God into a box and think that this is the only space in which God can exist. But when you get to know God for yourself, you know that God is greater than these two little boxes that are here on our Instagram, right? Greater, even larger than those 66 folks, right?
Yep.
Larger than formal religion, because there's a relationship in that. What is the relationship that's being developed between you and your higher creator, between you and yourself, and then also you and others, right?
Yeah, I like that. Okay, that's our last question before ending the live. Let me figure out. So, like, which one? What is the one or two things that you could say to someone that is, figuring out life, but they want to impact people's life, like either their community or the people around them,
Lord, not just
while being themselves?
I don't know what I can tell them, right? Yeah, I don't know what I could really tell somebody about impacting other people's lives other than just
Say these to your younger self. What could you say?
I mean, to my younger self, I knew who she was. She's like, it was just God and her, literally, to a certain degree. But I will back up and say that I guess the best advice that I could give anybody, I mean, I do have two kids, right? It's not like I didn't give advice to them. And I think I will tell you what I tell them, because like for me, it's like when I tell my kids a secret, then I'll tell everybody else. It's a secret. I'll tell y'all. But I'll tell y'all like I told my kids who are in their late teens and early 20s. And I'll say it in the order that I told them. for a very long time. It's two things. And then I added a third thing that said, go find your joy. Go find your joy. Develop your God center. And I told my kids, I don't care how you find God. I don't want y'all finding God in the crack house. Just find God. And I hope it is going to be in a way where you're walking along your path in God and you meet God that way, right? So find your joy, develop your God center. And the last thing I told them is that this was the last part I told my kids before they kind of like left, right? It's like, find your joy, develop your God center, and then to make your joy complete, make sure that whatever you do is going to be of service to someone. So whether it's, developing software or art or whatever it is, you're doing it for someone else, and whatever service that is, that's what makes the joy complete. So there it is.
Perfect. Well, thank you for being here. I'm so
Thank you for having me.
I think it will help a lot of people, honestly. I was like, Earl, you're dropping gems. Preach. So,
Yeah, but I love
is anywhere.
So I won't be in anybody's church. This is my church. Like once I leave, this is my church. Y'all are in my house with me, right? And once I leave the threshold of my house as well, that is my other church. But what you're not going to see here, you're not going to see no crosses. If you can't tell who we are, then we're doing something wrong.
Well, thank you so much. Is there anywhere someone can find you or?
Oh, there's a lot of places where people can find me. Now, I mean, if you're looking up Erica Smith, there's like millions of us. There's a folk singer, there's a writer, there's a stripper. I mean, but look for the one that lives in the south of France. That's me. So I'm on YouTube, but under a whole different name. On Instagram, but you can find me mostly on Instagram if I have my computer or something on, because I've kind of been offline. The L31 workshop is the company. So that's kind of like the hub for everything. That's where you can mostly find me if I haven't made it private again. But I think it's up work at the moment. So yeah, that's where you can find me mostly. And then on Thursdays, as a matter of fact, this Thursday, we'll be together at Canal Sud, so on Lagniappe. So there you go.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much.
It's been fun. It's been fun.